Hi, thanks for joining me. Today we'll take a look at the steps that I used to install the base roof rack system 08L02-TG7-100C on my 2020 Honda Pilot. This is the base roof rack system that does not require the roof rails. First, let's take a look at the advantages of the base roof rack system. It's about half the cost of buying the roof rails and bars. Also, it's all metal construction. It's solidly made. The bolts directly connect to the roof studs, and they use the larger T40 nuts. Also, they're torqued down to 16.2 foot-pounds, and I think they look better. If you're considering the roof rails and crossbars, know that the roof rails are made of plastic. I live in Florida where plastic degrades, and I don't want to have my kayaks going down the road at 70 miles an hour be at the mercy of old plastic breaking. Also, the bars attach with T30 bolts, and they attach at lower torque. It should be noted that both types of racks attach at the same load points and are not movable. You would think that you could slide the crossbars on the roof rails, but they attach at a very specific point. Everything that you need for the installation comes with the kit. That includes 4 new brackets, snap-away brackets, also your T40 bolts, and some spring clips for the caps and screws. The little yellow retainers I did not need in this particular installation. The crossbars come pre-assembled. You'll note that one is longer, it goes at the front of the car, and one is shorter, which goes at the rear of the car. You'll also know that these are nice, heavy aluminum castings. And if you flip them upside down, you'll see there's a rubber gasket, and they're preset for the lengths at the factory. The first step in the installation is to remove the roof molding on both sides. Near the windshield, you'll see a small cap that needs to be removed with a screwdriver. Inside is a 10mm bolt that needs to be removed. Next, I reached inside the hole and lifted up slightly. This allows you to reach to the inside of the molding and start peeling it back to the outside edge of the car. Do it very slowly, and you'll hear some light snapping. The snapping is the breakaway brackets. There's a total of 4 of them in there. It's not going to ruin the molding. It just is a little unsettling to hear it click. When you get to the very back of the car, you simply need to pull out the back molding piece from the existing permanent molding piece that's sitting in there. With all of the pieces removed from the molding, you can see that there's a single stud. That's where you took the 10mm bolt out of. There's another small stud. Then there's a double stud, another single stud, and a double stud near the rear. The double studs are slightly larger in diameter than the single studs, and the double studs also have a yellow breakaway bracket. You will not see any of the yellow breakaway brackets in the kit because you don't need them anymore. That's where the rails will install. I found the factory installation instructions to be overly complicated, so I thought I'd use common sense and simplify the process. First, I laid the molding back into the groove, aligning it with the front stud that we had taken the 10mm bolt out of. Then I used painter's tape in 2 different locations to mark the double studs. Because the moldings have a compound curve, be sure to put light pressure so that you compress the molding to make sure you get accurate readings for where you want to mark the studs. Now that you've marked the location of the double studs in 2 different places on your molding, you can lay that against the rack casting and see that there's a generous amount of room that you can use to cut and still have the molding tucked underneath the casting. I chose to cut about 1 inch away from where the studs are. I chose to do the cutting of the molding pieces with a Dremel tool. However, you can use a hacksaw or an air tool, but I would not use metal snips. After deburring the cut pieces, I decided I was going to coat them with a little bit of Rust-Oleum before I installed them. The process was simple. I just used a little bit of painter's tape and painted the last 1/4 inch of all the exposed pieces. It is now time to install the 3 sections that we have cut. On the first section, install a new breakaway bracket. It just slides into the back side of it. Be sure to tuck the gasket near the windshield underneath the other gaskets. Align the first stud, which is where we took out the 10mm bolt, Align the new bracket, snap-away bracket, at the second stud and push down firmly. There, you've installed the first section. Installing the second piece, or the middle piece, is similar. You put in a fresh bracket, slide it into place where the stud should be, split the difference between the front and rear double studs, and press down. You're now done with the second section. The third section in the back does not have a clip or a bracket. It just simply slides into the existing rear piece of the molding, and the front end just sits there. If you've done everything correctly, your three pieces should look like this when they're in place with the double studs exposed. Now it's time to place the racks onto the car. Remember, the longer rack goes up the front, the shorter rack goes towards the back. In the castings for the racks, you'll see one says LH, that stands for left hand, it goes to the driver's side. The other says RH, that's for the right hand side or the passenger side. Once they're in place, you should be able to look through the casting holes and see the double studs. That's where you're going to put the Torx bolts. Although it was not in the instructions, I chose to use Loctite Blue removable thread locker. That way it will prevent the bolts from backing themselves out, but you could still remove them in the future if you needed to. I had to press down and put a little bit of pressure on the gasket so that the threads would first start taking. Here's what it looks like when it's finally completed. Now is a good time to go back to the front of the car near the windshield and replace the 10mm bolt that you removed. And be sure to put the small cap back on top of it too. The final step in the process is to attach the rack covers. Be sure to attach the spring clips to them before you put them on. Set them on top of the castings and tap them down a little bit with the palm of your hand. You'll hear them snap into place. Finally, use the screws that are included in the kit to secure them in place. That's it. You've installed them. I hope you've learned something from this video, and if you have, please be sure to give me a rating. Thank you.